Mary was 9 years old and had never lied to her father. Not once. Not about a broken glass, not about a bad grade, not about anything that mattered or didn't. So when Owen got the call at 11 p.m., your daughter tampered with her IV, there may be equipment charges, he didn't get angry. He got very, very quiet. He drove to the hospital in that quiet, walked the pediatric corridor in it, stood in the doorway of room 14 and looked at his daughter sitting on the hospital bed, hands folded in her lap, IV line in her arm, eyes red from crying. "I didn't touch it, Dad." 3 words. The same voice she used when she told him about nightmares, when she asked him not to turn off the hall light. He believed her before she finished the sentence. What he didn't know yet was the boy standing near the foot of the bed. The chart updated within the hour. The signature at the bottom of a $3,200 billing notice that arrived 3 days later, a doctor's name printed clean, completely certain. Owen read the notice once, set it on the kitchen table, looked through the doorway at Mary asleep on the couch, IV bruise still fading yellow on her arm. Then he started making calls. One phone call would make the hospital board regret everything. Owen Reed had never been the kind of man who walked into a room and made people look up. He was 32 tall, medium height, the kind of face you'd forget on a Tuesday. He drove a 6-year-old Honda Civic with a cracked sun visor he kept meaning to fix, and he packed Mary's lunch every morning in the same blue snaplock container she'd picked out herself at the dollar store 2 years ago. He was not remarkable. He had never needed to be. What he was, quietly, without advertisement, was precise. The morning he admitted Mary to Children's Medical on Hargrove Street, he did what he always did in unfamiliar rooms. He looked at the equipment first. The infusion pump beside her bed was a Medfusion 4000 series. He recognized the model immediately. He'd written a compliance report on its predecessor 18 months ago for a contract with a regional hospital network. He checked the tubing connection at the Y-side junction, noted the firmware display on the side panel, and asked the admitting nurse which software version the unit was running. The nurse, young, tired at 8 a.m., clipboard pressed to her chest, blinked at him. "I'm sorry." "The software version," Owen said. "On the pump, it should show on the startup screen." She looked at the machine, then back at him. "I do equipment certification," he said. "Old habit. Sorry." She told him the version. He nodded once and didn't ask anything else. He pulled a chair to Mary's bedside, sat down, and found the stuffed rabbit she packed without telling him. He set it on the pillow beside her without a word. Mary was 7 years old and had her mother's stillness. Not shyness, stillness. There was a difference Owen had learned to recognize over 4 years of raising her alone. Shy children looked away. Mary looked directly at you and simply chose not to fill the silence with noise. On her second day in the ward, a nurse named Claire set a pen down on Mary's bed by accident, forgot it there during a routine check and walked out. Mary noticed it immediately. She looked at it, looked at the door, looked at it again. She didn't touch it. 11 minutes later, Claire came back, slightly flustered, already patting her pockets. "Oh, sorry, honey. Did I leave my—" "It's there," Mary said, pointing. "I didn't move it. It's yours." Claire picked it up, looked at the little girl for a moment. "Thank you, sweetheart." Mary just nodded and went back to her book. Owen had watched the whole thing from the doorway. He hadn't said anything. There was nothing to say. That was simply who his daughter was, a child who understood that other people's things were other people's things, and that the line between mine and not mine was not a complicated one. He thought about that later, much later, when the line was the only thing that mattered. Dr. Harlan Cross was 52, with silver hair kept short, and a manner so consistently calm it read at first as reassurance. He'd been deputy medical director at Children's Medical for 11 years. His reputation was for clean closures, incidents that didn't become incidents, complaints that resolved before they became formal. He was very good at his job. It depended entirely on which job you thought he was doing. Owen met him for the first time on the morning after the incident, when he arrived to find the chart note already written and the decision already made. Cross listened to Owen's concerns with full attention. He maintained eye contact. He did not interrupt until Owen finished. Then he said, "Mr. Reed, we don't question the depth of your concern for your daughter, but concern isn't the same as evidence." "There's no device log in the chart," Owen said. "Our staff documented what was observed at the scene." Observed or concluded, those are different things. Cross's expression didn't shift, not even slightly. "You're welcome to submit a formal written complaint. We review all concerns through our standard patient relations process." He said it the way people say, "The check is in the mail," professionally, without a single word that could be quoted against him. Owen looked at him for a moment, at the calm that wasn't really calm, at the patience that wasn't really patience, at a man who had learned to use the architecture of reasonableness to build walls. "I'll do that," Owen said. He submitted the written complaint at 9:30 that morning. He kept a copy. He noted the date, the time, and the name of the staff member who received it. The ward at night was a different place. The daytime version had noise, carts rolling, visitors talking, a television somewhere playing cartoons at low volume. The nighttime version had the hum of machines and the specific quiet of people trying not to disturb the sleeping. Mary had been in the ward for 4 days when it happened. It was 11:14 p.m. The ward had one nurse covering the section, Claire, who had been on since 3 in the afternoon. At 11:09, a call came in from the room at the end of the hall. Claire went. She was gone 4 minutes. Ethan was 9 years old and had a hairline fracture in his left wrist from a skateboarding accident. He'd been cleared for light mobility. He had interpreted this permission with the expansiveness that 9-year-old boys tend to apply to rules. He wandered. He pushed open the door to Mary's room because it was slightly ajar, and he was bored and curious and 9 years old. The machines were interesting. He leaned in to look, and his hand, just brushing, just curious, caught the rate adjustment dial on the left side of the panel. The number changed. The alarm sounded 12 seconds later. Claire came running. She silenced the alarm, checked the rate, recalibrated the setting. Her hands were efficient. Her face was controlled. But her chest was tight in the way it got when something happened on her watch. She looked at the 2 children. Ethan stood near the foot of the bed. He'd backed against the wall when the alarm went off. His face had gone the specific pale of a child who knows he's done something wrong and is calculating an exit. Mary sat exactly where she'd been sitting for the past 2 hours, hands in her lap, but Maud, I Fräulein in her right arm, undisturbed. I am died. Claire asked what happened. Something moved behind Ethan's eyes, fast, reflexive, the way fear moves in children before thinking catches up. "I think," he said. "I think she did it." Mary looked at him, then at Claire Dautillo. "I didn't touch it," she said. Her voice was steady. "I didn't." Claire looked at the pump, at the repositioned rate display, at Ethan standing 3 feet from the control panel with his hands pressed behind his back, at Mary still in the same position she'd been in all evening. She told herself she'd follow up in the morning when there was more time. She wrote in the chart at 11:22 p.m. Patient interfered with medical device. Equipment damage suspected. Morning came. The note stayed. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at the nursing station addressed to Owen. He opened it at Mary's bedside, sitting in the chair he'd occupied for parts of 4 consecutive days. Mary was asleep. The IV line ran from the pump to the back of her right hand, and the bruising around the insertion point had gone from red to the dull yellow of healing. Owen read the letter once. It was formal. It was polite. It cited Section 4.2 of the hospital's patient liability policy. It noted that the infusion pump had required recalibration and partial component assessment, with estimated costs of $3,200. It requested that the family acknowledge financial responsibility for damage resulting from patient interference with hospital equipment. At the bottom, Dr. Harlan Cross, Deputy Medical Director, died. Owen folded the letter, set it on the tray table, looked at his daughter's hand, the bruise, the tape, the thin plastic tube that had been in her arm for 4 days because her body needed help doing something it should have been able to do on its own. He thought about the pen on the bed. He thought about Mary sitting for 11 minutes without touching it. He thought about what it meant that a piece of paper, official, stamped, signed, now said his daughter had done something she hadn't done. Something shifted in him. Not loudly. Owen was not a loud person, but something that had been open, closed, and something that had been still began to move. He picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in 8 months. "Marcus," he said, "I need your help." The compensation letter sat on the tray table for 2 hours before Owen touched it again. He'd left it there while he helped Mary with dinner, cutting the chicken into pieces she wouldn't ask him to cut, but he did anyway, as he had since she was 4. He left it there while she watched a nature documentary about migratory birds, her legs tucked under the hospital blanket. He left it there because he needed to think before he spoke, and he needed to be sure before he said anything to her. When the documentary ended, and Mary clicked off the screen, the room went quiet in that particular way hospital rooms go quiet at night. Owen pulled his chair closer. He waited until she looked at him. "Mary," he said. She looked up. Her face was open, the way it always was with him. No guard, no performance. Just his daughter. "That night," Owen said, "when the alarm went off." He kept his voice low, unhurried. "Did you touch the machine?" The question sat between them. Mary didn't look away. She didn't shift in the bed or pull at the edge of her blanket. She looked at him directly without calculation. "No," she said. "I didn't touch it." Owen looked at her for a long moment. He thought about the pen. He thought about 4 years of watching this child move through the world, the way she returned grocery carts to the exact spot they came from, the way she'd told him once when he gave her too much change at a cafe, and he'd said keep it, and she'd said, but it's theirs. He thought about all the small moments that added up to a pattern, and how patterns were more reliable than any single data point. He put his hand over hers. Her fingers were cool. "Okay," he said. Something moved across her face, not relief exactly. More like the releasing of something she hadn't realized she was holding. "But they said I broke the machine," she said. "They want us to pay money." "I know. That's a lot of money, Dad." "I know it is." She was quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, "Are you worried?" Owen looked at her. He thought about saying no, the easy answer, the one that would smooth the night out. He'd always believed she deserved the true version of things, calibrated for what a 7-year-old could carry. "A little," he said. But not because I think you did something wrong. Mary absorbed this quietly, completely. She looked down at his hand over hers, then back up at him. Okay, she said. It was a small word. It landed like something much heavier. Owen stayed until her breathing slowed and her book slipped to the side of the mattress. He set it on the tray table next to the letter and sat in the dark for a few minutes. Then, he went to the hallway and made the call. Marcus Webb picked up on the second ring. They'd met 11 years ago at a medical equipment conference in Phoenix. Owen barely 21, just out of his certification program, Marcus already building a practice in healthcare law. Owen had referred 3 clients to Marcus over the years. Marcus had never charged him for the 2 times Owen had called with questions. This was not a question call. Owen stood in the hallway outside Mary's room and told Marcus everything in 9 minutes. No editorializing. Just sequence and fact. The incident, the chart entry, his objections, Cross's response, the letter. Marcus listened without interrupting. When Owen finished, there was a pause, not uncertainty, just processing. They issued a compensation demand without attaching device logs, Marcus said. Correct. And the chart note attributes the incident to your daughter based on a statement from another patient, no independent verification. That's what the documentation shows. Owen, you have the right to request the complete technical record for any device involved in a patient incident. That includes internal log data, timestamp records, every interaction the machine captured. They cannot legally withhold that from you, and they cannot enforce a financial claim based on incomplete documentation. I want to file formally, Owen said. Device logs, decision trail for the chart entry, camera footage from the ward hallway for the relevant window. I'll draft the request tonight, Marcus said. You'll have it by morning. Owen looked through the small window in Mary's door. She was still. The machines were steady. Marcus, he said. Yeah? I'm not trying to burn anything down. I just need what's true to be on the record. A short pause. That's the best reason to do this, Marcus said. I'll call you at 8. The formal legal request landed on Cross's desk at 9:47, the following morning. Cross was, above all things, a man who responded, who managed, who looked at a situation and found the angle from which it could be contained. What he did next took Owen 4 days to find out, and when he found out, it told him more about Cross than anything Cross had ever said directly. Claire was charting at the nursing station when Cross appeared beside her. He didn't call her into his office. He simply materialized at her elbow, present, unhurried, exerting gravity without effort. Nurse, he said, setting a printed copy of the chart entry on the desk beside her keyboard. I wanted to check in about the Reed incident documentation. Claire looked at the paper, her own words looking back at her. The family has engaged a lawyer, Cross said. His voice was the same as always, measured, professional. I want to make sure our documentation is solid before this goes any further. What you wrote is accurate. It reflects what was observed and reported at the scene. Any attempt to revise it at this point. He paused. Just a beat. Would raise questions about why the revision was necessary. It would reflect on the entire night shift's credibility, the whole department. He picked up the paper, straightened it once. I just wanted you to be aware of the position we're all in, he said. Professionally. He walked away. Claire sat at the nursing station for a long time after that. She thought about what Cross had said. She understood every word of it. She also understood what he hadn't said. Any attempt to revise it would raise questions. Not, what you wrote was correct. Not, the documentation is accurate. Just, don't change it. Those were not the same thing. She'd known the difference since nursing school, from a line an instructor had written on the whiteboard and underlined twice. Documentation is not protection. It is responsibility. She closed the chart, opened it again, read what she'd written one more time. She didn't change anything. Not yet, not yet. But something had shifted behind her sternum, small and certain, the way a loose thread shifts when you finally pull it. In room 14th, Mary was reading. It was a book about a girl who trained horses. Owen had found it at the hospital gift shop. A paperback with a worn spine suggesting other children had read it before her, which Mary had mentioned twice without complaint. She was 112 pages in. She was sitting up straighter than she had 3 days ago. It was subtle. Claire noticed it on her afternoon rounds and stopped in the doorway before she knocked. Mary looked up. Hi, what are you reading? Mary held up the cover. Claire stepped inside. Any good? It's okay, Mary said. Then, after a pause, the horse part is good. The main character makes bad decisions. What kind? She doesn't ask for help when she should, Mary said. She thinks she can figure everything out alone and she can't, but she doesn't want anyone to know that. Claire looked at her for a moment. Yeah, she said. That happens a lot. She finished the check and walked back into the hallway. Stood there with her pen in her hand, not writing anything. She thought about the chart entry. She thought about a 7-year-old girl who hadn't touched a pen that wasn't hers. She thought about Cross standing at her elbow saying, "Don't change it," without ever saying those words. She wasn't sure yet what she was going to do. But she was starting to ask the question. And that, she knew, was how it always started. The device log arrived 4 days after Marcus filed the request. It came through his office as part of the formal disclosure package, 43 pages of technical documentation, time-stamped system records, and internal error reports the hospital's legal department had been required by law to produce. Marcus forwarded it to Owen at 6:14 a.m. with a single line, "Call me after you've read it." Owen read it at the kitchen table before Mary woke up, coffee going cold beside him. The apartment still dark except for the lamp over the table. He read it the way he read every technical document, without rushing, letting the data speak in the order it chose to speak. It spoke clearly. The MedFusion 4000 series logged every interaction with its control panel. Not just alarms, every button press, every dial adjustment, every approach detected by the proximity sensor on the left side panel. The system recorded position data relative to the bed axis, cross-referenced with the patient monitoring feed. At 22:47:3, the rate adjustment dial had been turned 2.4 rotations counterclockwise. The interaction was logged from the left lateral approach, the side of the machine that faced the open room, not the bed. The side that a patient lying in the bed with an IV line in her right hand could not reach without disconnecting the line, sitting up fully and leaning across her own body. Mary had not done any of those things. The patient monitoring feed confirmed it. But her position hadn't changed between 22:40 and 22:52. Owen set the page down, picked up his coffee. It was cold. He drank it anyway. He called Marcus at 7:02. "The log puts the interaction on the left lateral panel," Owen said. Mary was on IV through the right hand. She couldn't have reached it from her position without triggering the patient monitor. "I know," Marcus said. "I had a consultant look at it last night. He'll put it in writing. But Owen, if you want the chart entry corrected, not just the claim dropped, you need the footage. The log tells us she didn't do it. The footage tells us who did. The footage tells us who did." The room camera in the East Wing had been on the repair list for 3 weeks, waiting on a procurement approval that kept getting bumped. Budget delay. No conspiracy, just the ordinary failure of systems under pressure. But the hallway camera ran on the main security circuit. It had been running without interruption for the entire month of November. The footage came through 2 days later. Owen watched it on his laptop in the hospital family lounge, a small room off the main corridor with 2 couches and a coffee machine that made a sound like a small argument every time it ran. He waited until Mary was asleep. 22:43:57. The hallway outside room 14 was empty. 22:44:11. Ethan appeared at the left edge of the frame. Blue hospital socks. One arm in a sling. He walked slowly, the way kids walk when they're trying not to look like they're doing anything in particular. 22:44:19. He pushed open the door to room 14 and went inside. 22:46:2. He came back out. He walked faster this time. 22:47:3. The alarm timestamp from the device log. Owen watched it twice. Then he closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of the family lounge. He didn't feel like he'd won something. He felt the way he felt when he found a fault in a piece of equipment that had already been in use for 6 months, a specific exhaustion, the kind that comes not from the finding but from the calculation of everything that had happened in the interim. All of this had been findable from the beginning. The log, the footage, the position data. None of it was hidden. It just hadn't been looked for. He texted Marcus. Footage confirms. Ethan entered at 22:44, left at 22:46. Alarm at 22:47. Timeline is clean. Marcus replied in 4 minutes. Good. I'll prepare the formal submission. Cross is going to want to settle before this gets to the board. Owen put his phone in his pocket and went back to check on Mary. Cross received the footage analysis on a Thursday morning. He read it in his office with the door closed. He sat with the documents for 22 minutes. Then he walked down to the East Wing nursing station. Claire was updating charts when he appeared. Same as before, no office, no email, just his presence at her elbow. The Reed family's legal representative has submitted additional documentation, he said. Device logs and footage. It's going to require a unified response from our side. A pause. I want to make sure we're aligned on the sequence of events as recorded. Claire kept her eyes on the screen. Cross continued. His voice had the same professional warmth it always did, but something underneath had gone flat. An amended statement at this stage will raise questions about your judgment, about this department's credibility. A finding against the original documentation could affect your position here. Claire stopped typing. She turned and looked at Cross directly, not confrontationally, just with the specific attention of someone who has decided to see something clearly. Dr. Cross, she said. I've been thinking about it too. Something shifted in his expression, barely perceptible. I'm going to contact the family's attorney, Claire said. I want to amend my statement. I documented the incident based on what Ethan said, not on what I personally observed. That's a material difference, and it should be on the record. Claire, tut. His voice was quiet now. Factual. You need to think carefully. You'd be contradicting documentation you signed. I know. It could end your career at this hospital. I know that too. Cross held her gaze for a moment, running the calculation he always ran, which pressure applied where would produce the desired result. He looked at Claire and made his assessment. He was wrong. Then I'd suggest you take more time before making any decisions, he said. Claire turned back to her screen. I've taken enough time, she said quietly. I should have done this 3 days ago. She called Marcus Webb that afternoon from the break room. Door closed, her lunch untouched on the table beside her. She'd written his number on a piece of paper and carried it in her pocket for 6 hours before she dialed. "Mr. Webb," she said. "My name is Claire Navarro. I'm the nurse who documented the Reed incident on November 14th. I want to amend my statement." She took a breath. "I wrote that the patient interfered with the device, but I didn't personally observe that. I recorded what another patient said. That's not the same thing, and it should have been documented differently." A pause. "Miss Navarro," Marcus said. "Thank you for calling. Can you come in tomorrow morning?" "Yes," she said. "I can." She hung up, sat with her hand still on the phone. She thought about Mary reading the horse book, about the girl in the story who didn't ask for help, about what it kept costing her to keep not asking. Something in her chest had loosened, a tightness she'd been carrying since 11:22 p.m. on November 14th, when she'd written 7 words that weren't precisely true and told herself there wasn't time to be more careful. There was time now. Cross found out within the hour. His assistant forwarded the notification: standard process flag, staff member initiating contact with opposing counsel. He walked to the east wing. Claire was coming out of the stairwell. "I've been informed you contacted the Reed family's attorney," he said. "Yes. I told you." "You told me not to amend my statement," Claire said. She shifted her bag on her shoulder. "You told me it would affect my credibility. You didn't tell me it was the right thing to keep it as is. You just told me to keep it." Cross looked at her. The hallway was empty in both directions. "You just ended your career at this hospital," he said. Claire looked at him for a moment. "I documented something inaccurately," she said. "I'm correcting it. That's what the training says to do." She paused. "I should have done it immediately. I didn't, and that's on me, but I'm doing it now." She walked past him. Cross stood in the hallway. For the first time in 11 years at Children's Medical, he had no immediate next move. The log was in. The footage was in. The nurse who'd written the original chart entry had just handed the opposing counsel a sworn correction. He walked back to his office, closed the door. He sat at his desk and looked at Marcus Webb's formal submission: device log analysis, footage timeline, request for chart correction, and full dismissal of the compensation claim. He thought about the board meeting scheduled for Tuesday. He thought about the question that was now, inevitably, going to be asked. Why was a compensation demand issued before the device log was reviewed? He didn't have an answer that would survive the asking. For the first time since Owen Reed had walked into his hospital with a sick daughter and a working knowledge of infusion pump firmware, Cross understood that he had not been managing a situation. He had been building one. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Friday. Conference Room B on the administrative floor had a long table, 8 chairs, and a window that looked out onto the hospital's west parking structure. It was not a room designed for comfort. Dr. Eleanor Marsh arrived first. She was 61, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and the particular stillness of someone who had run a large institution long enough to know that most crises look different up close than they did in the summary report. She'd read Marcus Webb's filing the night before. All of it. And twice. She'd also made 3 phone calls that morning. To the head of risk management, to the chair of the hospital's ethics board, and to a former colleague who specialized in medical device liability. She hadn't told Cross about any of them. She poured a coffee and sat at the head of the table and waited. The hospital's legal counsel arrived at 8:52. The head of pediatrics at 8:55. Cross came in at 8:58. Silver hair, pressed jacket, the expression of a man who had walked into difficult rooms before and walked out intact. He nodded at Marsh. She nodded back. Said nothing. Owen came in with Marcus at 9:15. He set a folder on the table and didn't open it. He hadn't slept well. That was the only thing that showed. Marsh opened without preamble. "We're here to review the documentation record related to the incident of November 14th involving patient Mary Reed and the subsequent compensation demand issued by this hospital." She looked around the table. "Mr. Webb has submitted a formal response on behalf of the family. I've read it. I'd like Mr. Reed to walk us through the key points directly." Cross's counsel leaned forward. "Dr. Marsh, I'd suggest we begin with the hospitals." "I'd like Mr. Reed to go first," Marsh said. Not unkindly, just finally. Owen opened his folder. He didn't look at Cross when he spoke. He looked at Marsh and at the documents in front of him. His voice was even. He spoke the way he'd always spoken, without performance, without heat, trusting the information to do its own work. "The incident occurred at 22:47 on November 14th, he said. "The MedFusion 4000 series pump in room 14 logged an adjustment to the drip rate at that timestamp. The adjustment was made via the rate dial on the left lateral panel." He slid a page to the center of the table, the device log extract, the relevant lines highlighted. Mary was receiving warfarin treatment through her right hand. She was in standard patient position. The left lateral panel is on the opposite side of the unit from the bed, the side that faces the open room. To have made that adjustment, she would have needed to remove the IV line, sit up fully, and lean across her own body. He paused. The patient monitoring feed confirms she didn't move during the relevant window. The log confirms no interaction was registered from the bed proximate side of the unit. He set a second page beside the first. "This is the hallway footage from the external camera. It shows Ethan, the patient from room 16, entering room 14 at 22:44. He leaves at 22:46. The alarm registers at 22:47. He looked up briefly. 1 minute between his departure and the alarm, consistent with a setting that needed a cycle to register. The room was quiet. Owen reached into the folder and took out the compensation letter. He set it on the table, face up, the signature visible from across the room. "This was issued on November 17th, he said. 3 days after the incident, before the device log was reviewed, before the hallway footage was requested, based on a chart entry that has since been formally amended by the nurse who wrote it, who has confirmed she recorded the incident based on a statement from another patient, not on her own direct observation. Not on her own direct observation." He looked at Cross for the first time. "I'm not here to damage this hospital's reputation," Owen said. "I'm here because my daughter's medical record says she did something she didn't do, and because a formal billing demand was sent to our home with her name on it for $3,200 on the basis of evidence that wasn't evidence." He closed the folder. "That's what I came to say." The silence lasted long enough to become its own kind of statement. Cross spoke first. "The compensation demand was issued under standard protocol for equipment incidents. At the time of issuance, the documentation on file indicated patient interference. The protocol doesn't require." Harlan Tutte. Marsh's voice was quiet. She hadn't looked up from the page in front of her. "When was the demand issued?" "November 17th, as Mr. Reed stated." "And when was the device log first reviewed?" A pause. "That review was initiated as part of the legal disclosure process." "When?" Marsh said. She looked up. "Not the process, the date." Cross's jaw tightened, barely, just the faintest movement. The formal review was completed as part of the disclosure package provided last week. So the demand was issued before the device log was reviewed. It wasn't a question. Cross said nothing. There was no answer that improved his position. Marcus set a single sheet on the table, quietly without announcement. "I'd also like to note," Marcus said, "that on November 19th, Dr. Cross requested a meeting with me, informally in the hospital cafeteria. During that conversation, he suggested that a prolonged legal process would not be beneficial for either party, and specifically referenced the fact that Mary Reed was still a patient at this facility." He paused. "I documented the conversation immediately afterward. Time, location, and full content. The record is here." Marsh looked at the sheet, then at Cross. Cross said nothing. The head of pediatrics was looking at the table. The hospital's legal counsel had stopped writing. Cross sat very still, the stillness of a man who has run out of moves and is calculating whether stillness itself can buy him something. It couldn't. Everyone in the room could see the calculation happening, and that was, in its own way, the final answer to the question no one needed to ask out loud. Marsh asked Cross to remain when the meeting ended at 10:44 a.m. Everyone else filed out. Marcus gathered his papers with the unhurried efficiency of a man who had expected this outcome. Owen walked out last. He didn't feel the way he'd imagined he might. He'd thought there would be relief, or the satisfaction of a problem correctly solved. What he felt was tired, the specific exhaustion of a task that should have been unnecessary. He pressed the elevator button and stood with his hands in his pockets. Marcus came up beside him. "It's done." "Yeah." "Chart correction goes through in 24 hours. The compensation claim is withdrawn. Formal paperwork by end of day." The elevator opened. They got in. "What happens to Cross?" Owen asked. "Board review," Marcus said. "The conversation he had with me is a problem. Issuing a demand before reviewing the device data is a problem. The pressure on the nurse is a problem." A pause. "He won't recover from this professionally. Not here." Owen nodded. The elevator opened on the 4th floor, and he walked back toward room 14. Dr. Marsh came to the room that afternoon. She knocked before entering. Owen noticed that. She was still in her work clothes, but she'd taken off her reading glasses. They hung at her chest on their chain, and without them, she looked slightly more like a person and slightly less like a title. Mary was sitting up with the horse book open in her lap. She looked at the woman in the doorway with the direct attention she gave everyone, not guarded, just present. Marsh pulled the visitor's chair close to the bed and sat in it, which brought her closer to Mary's eye level. "I wanted to come and speak with you directly," she said. "I want to apologize for what happened. What was written in your record was not accurate, and the letter that was sent to your father should not have been sent." She paused. "We made mistakes. This hospital made mistakes, and you and your father were the ones who paid for them. I'm sorry for that." Mary listened with the full attention she gave everything. "They deleted what it said about me?" she asked. "Yes," Marsh said. "That entry has been removed. Your record is clean." Mary's fingers loosened slightly on the spine of the book. "Okay," she said. It was a small word. It landed in the room like something much larger. Marsh spoke briefly with Owen in the hallway. "The system review will take time," she said. "But it's happening. Device logs will be required documentation before any equipment incident can be recorded as patient cost. It should have been standard practice already. It wasn't." She looked at him. "I'm sorry it took your daughter to make that visible." Owen looked back at her. "She didn't do anything," he said. "I know," Marsh said. "That's what I mean." She left. Owen stood in the hallway for a moment, then went back inside. The room was quiet in the way it got in the late afternoon. The ward traffic slower, the light coming through the window at a low angle that made everything look softer than it was. Owen sat in the chair beside Mary's bed. She put the book down. They didn't talk for a while, which was normal for them. Then Mary said, "Did you know you were going to win?" Owen looked at her. "No, die." "Then why did you do it?" He thought about the question. He didn't answer it quickly because it deserved a real answer, and she would know the difference. "Because you told me no," he said. "And I believed you. That's all it was." Mary was quiet for a moment. What if they hadn't listened? "Then I'd have kept going," Owen said. "Until someone did." She looked at him. Something settled in her face, a tension he hadn't fully noticed until it left. She lay back against the pillow and pulled the blanket up to her shoulder. "Dad. Yeah?" A pause. Her voice was very quiet. "Thank you for asking me." Owen didn't answer. He reached over and turned off the small lamp on the bedside table. The room went to the dim gray of late afternoon, the machines still steady, the window holding the last of the light. He stayed in the chair. He thought about what she'd said. Not "thank you for fighting." Not "thank you for winning." Thank you for asking. For treating the question as one worth putting to her directly, as though her answer mattered before anything else. Before the documents, before the data, before everything that would eventually prove what she'd already told him was true. She'd been thanking him for the smallest thing. He thought it might be the most important thing he'd ever done. Sometimes the most powerful thing a parent can do isn't fight loudly. It's kneel down, look their child in the eye, and ask, really ask, before the world has already decided the answer. Owen didn't have connections. He didn't have money. He didn't walk into that hospital with anything except a quiet certainty about who his daughter was, built not from blind love, but from 4 years of watching her return grocery carts, leave pens untouched, and tell the truth even when silence would have been easier. That's what he fought with. Not rage. Not power. Just the accumulated weight of paying attention. And Mary, 7 years old, IV line in her arm, the whole institution pointing in one direction, held on to that. One sentence from her father and she stopped sinking. "I believe you." 3 words. No courtroom drama. No raised voice. Just a father who asked first and meant it. In a world that moves fast and concludes faster, that kind of attention is its own form of justice. It doesn't always come with an apology. But when it does, when the record finally says what was true all along, it turns out that's exactly enough. If Owen's story moved you, drop a comment and tell me why. Was it the moment he asked before he assumed? The moment Mary said, "Thank you for asking me"? Or something quieter than that? Something you recognized from your own life? I read every single one. If this is the kind of story you want more of, real, human, and worth slowing down for, hit subscribe and stay close. There's more coming. And thank you, genuinely, for watching all the way to the end. That means more than the numbers ever will.